Okay, hello. I don't know if you can see me or not. I can't actually run around to the other side of the camera to see if you can see me or not. Practical problem. But I just wanted to, I've met with most of the group. I've met with, I think, 2 or 3 of the groups for the group projects. I just wanted to give you a little more idea of how to start talking about setting up what is essentially a small consultancy. And there's a slide in the last day's slides that has this diagram, which shows an area of concern, methodology, and a framework of ideas. And this is sort of it's a way to think about how to set up your consultancy in a way that both allows you to respond to something that an organization actually needs, and at the same time gives you kind of a framework to reflect on how did you learn, what did you learn actually from the area of concern itself, the way you approached it, and the ideas, the framework of ideas. So I'm going to explain this really quickly, and the idea is just to give you a better idea of one way of approaching it. So when you're working with an organization, you're going to need to first figure out what that organization is, make some contact with them. You're going to let them know what you're doing, why it is that you're even doing this project, but letting them know that you're here to try and help do something real, to help them figure something out in their organization, something that would be useful to them. And a good way to start the whole process is by setting up a meeting with the organization to find out more about what I call, or what Peter Checkland in this article calls, the area of concern. What is the situation in the organization currently, and how can we do something about it? But we need to first understand what are their needs. We can't go in there and say, I like cash flow, so we're going to work on your cash flow. They might find that to be a useful exercise for you, but it may not be meaningful for them. So you have to really balance what you're actually able to offer with what they need, and you figure out what they need in the smartest way possible through a series of good questions and an initial interview is usually a good way of doing it. A live interview is much better than phone in this case, because you'll learn more about the situation just even from the things they stress, the body movements. It's really worth setting up that initial meeting live, I guess. So you're asking the question when you're sitting down with the people from the organization, what is the area of concern? What is the situation? And once you've asked quite a few questions about that, including figuring out some of the relationships, you may find that, oh, they have an issue with procurement, and that has relationships to this person and to this system, or maybe something on cash flow, or maybe something on any area that we've talked about. You can come back to MIS or wherever you're going to meet, and draw what we call a rich picture. And a rich picture is just get a big flip chart piece of paper, get some colored pencils, some markers, and get your group members around it, and draw what is the situation. How did you understand it? How did you interpret the situation? What did you understand to be the area of concern, the specific areas that they need potential help on? Now, when you draw the picture, the nice thing is it gives each person a chance to dump on a piece of paper what they understood from the situation, which can be quite different. There's going to be a lot of differences there. And it will allow you to come to some level of agreement as a group on what is the situation, and therefore within the overall area of concern, what should we focus on, or what should we propose to focus on? Because you're going to hear enough things, more things than you could possibly respond to in a small project like this. And so you're going to have to analyze, but then choose, okay, so we think we should focus here for these reasons. And drawing this rich picture really gives you a good way to be able to do that, and it provides nice initial documentation also for your process. Once you have a better idea of what your area of concern is, and you've kind of retaken contact with the organization and said, okay, here's what we think that might be a good idea then, or here's how we think we'd like to approach it. You can include in that, you should include in that, or at least internally have an understanding of, if this is the area of concern, what methodology would help us ask questions about this area of concern, figure it out better. Methodology understood as the overall principles that you use, the processes that you use, the steps, as well as the specific methods, which could include interviews, diagnostic processes, whatever you come up with. But methodology meant to understand methodology as the overall way that we would approach asking better questions of this area of concern, right? Now, the thing about a methodology in And a regular consultancy is, well, people are just like, okay, this is what you need. Okay, here's my method. Let's come in and problem solve. And in and out, right? There's not a whole lot of reflective learning that's going on. In not just in this class, but in general, I care about, and there's a lot written on the importance of a little more reflective learning-based process for figuring out what's needed and how to, and what could be some recommendations to go about it. So this methodology should be grounded in a framework of ideas, which is what we have here at the very end. Framework of ideas means if what you're dealing with here is procurement, your methodology that has something that's built on some good theory and frameworks or whatever about procurement that will enrich your ability to ask questions about the area of concern. So obviously you could go, again, regarding, depending on what the topic is, you could go to the course readings, to some of the slides, but you should go deeper. I mean, if you're dealing with procurement, dig a little bit deeper so that when you're looking at their situation and when you're going to offer recommendations later, you can refer first to your really good ideas, but also to some good knowledge on the subject that you've dug a little deeper into. So you become expert consultants by virtue of just reading a little bit, going a little bit deeper into it. And I mentioned to one of the groups, you shouldn't go in there with a mentality of, we're the students and we're here to learn. Of course you're there to learn and you're students, but I'm also, when I go do a consultancy, I'm also there to learn. And half the time, there's no way I know the answers to what they need. It's a process of finding out with them and figuring it out. And you can do that just as well as others, because as you've seen in most of the slides and most of the classes we've had so far, this is mostly about critical thinking and creative thinking. And so you should go in there with a little bit of confidence, I think. So the last thing I'll mention about this way of looking at a process is you've figured out something about an area that needs some more attention, an area of concern. You've designed a methodology or set of steps and principles, etc., to ask better questions of that area of concern. So you apply this methodology to this area of concern, applied to. Now, what comes out of that are three types of knowledge, essentially. One type of knowledge is content knowledge related to the area of concern itself. So that's the knowledge about what is the situation and what do we think you should do about it, which would be your recommendations, right? But this will also yield learning about your methodology, how you approached finding out about this situation. What did you learn at this level from approaching this situation? And there's a third type of learning, which is if, let's say again, you applied methodology to look at a procurement situation here, this is going to provide you new knowledge also about the original framework of ideas about procurement. You may gain an intuitive, interesting way of framing procurement that's quite different and maybe even better than some of the things you've seen in the framework of ideas. So if we reflect, if we have a little framework when we go into it, and then we pause and we reflect on the different types of knowledge that are coming out, we can really learn about it, I think, in a little more holistic way, which I'm recommending that you all do. I also recommended that students please try to use, what's it called? Zoho projects. Any of you who are in Beryl's class, she requires you to use it. I highly encourage you to use it for organizing your tasks. It's also a good way of increasing overall work distribution, and by making everyone's tasks transparent, I think it includes kind of a positive peer pressure to make sure every group member is able to and is cognizant of doing their part, which is important. Let's see, I think I had a couple other things here that were worth mentioning. Yeah, so basically just figure out what's needed. You can't offer just anything, but you can offer a few things. But don't go in there thinking you're going to offer one thing or another. You need to listen to them first. Once you figure that out, develop a rich picture together, make sure you understand, make sense out of it, make sure you understand what's going on. Figure out a methodology, how you're going to go about it, and make sure that methodology starts from your creative thinking, but builds also on some solid ideas in the broader framework of ideas. If you have